Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, TIFF's Senior International Programmer for Canada, and this is The Other Thing I Do. My guest this week is Ally Pankiw, a wild talent who broke out as a writer on Schitt's Creek and went on to direct the first season of Mae Martin's brilliant Feel Good and the Joan is Awful episode of Black Mirror, among others. Her terrific first feature, I Used to Be Funny, starts rolling out to theaters across North America this Friday, June 7th, and it stars Rachel Sennett of Shiva Baby and Bottoms as a Toronto stand-up trying to overcome a traumatic experience and get herself back up on stage, only to find herself backsliding when a teenager she used to know goes missing. Featuring a killer supporting cast that includes Olga Petza, Sabrina Jalise, Danny Kine, Ennis Esmer, Dan Byrne, Miguel Rivas, and Jason Jones, it's a smart, sharp character study built on Sennett's exceptional performance, and you should see it. Ally picked Josie and the Pussycats, Deborah Kaplan and Harry Elfont's raucous, silly, and brilliantly subversive spin on the Archie Comics property, taking teen musicians Josie, Val, and Melody, played by Rachel Lee Cook, Rosario Dawson, and Tara Reid, and putting them on the road to fame and fortune as pop stars, packaged by the sinister duo of Alan Cumming and Parker Posey, who plan to use them as pawns in the corporate subjugation of America's teenagers. Yep, they saw the future. This is Someone Else's Movie.
You have the Blu-ray?
I do. 20th anniversary. It's got all the extras, but it's Mill Creek released it. It's a cheap label that got hold of the Universal catalog. You can get it for $6 at me, but you should absolutely grab it.
You know what? I will. As someone who's realizing how scary it is that so many things are disappearing digitally, it's like why, Vidiots and all those organizations are so important, saving all the actual physical copies.
You should see my basement.
I know, like in the apocalypse, I'd a future civilization. I'd love for them to just find a Josie and the Pussycats Blu-ray and be like, this was humans. This was humanity. I think it would be I think it would be a good representation of the 2000s. Why that movie? It's a perfect movie and it has stood the test of time and it was so ahead of its time. But I think because it was about young women, no one took it seriously. And I think a lot of films did a similar thing after, but because they had men in it, and we don't think young men are as frivolous as young women, I think they got a lot more critical acclaim. And I think this movie just was owed so much, such a better reception than it was given. And the low-rise pants. The low-rise jeans defy physics and defy gravity. So
that is the one thing I had to admit, watching it again, realizing part of it is a commentary on the sexualization of these girls, and they are girls, like they're kids, as performers. And part of it is, this is just how movie studios dressed young actors.
Well, that was the era of the era of the midriff. So it's it doesn't feel outside of the sort of fashion that was being presented in any of those films. Even Tara Reid was just the queen of low-rise pants. It was crazy. You look at her torso and you're like, what? That doesn't even look like a human body.
There's a lot more of Rachel Lee Cook's sternum than I remembered.
Yes, yeah. There were a lot of drapey sort of triangle tops and handkerchiefs as tops. And it was a hard time to be a young woman. I'm going to be honest, those being the standards, but also the cast is so incredible in the film. Everyone is amazing. It's Alan Cummings and it's Parker Posey and it's fucking Rosario Dawson and it's Rachel Lee Cook. And where did she go? And it's just, I don't know. It's just such a delight. Eugene's in it. I just don't think people realize how smart it was. It was just the comedy in it is perfection. So yeah.
Yeah, I went back and looked at my old, I think it was from Metro or GTA Today or whatever Toronto Star publication I was writing for that year, and it was just why aren't people aware of this film? And the answer is I think absolutely it was dismissed as candy. It was it was puffy. It was also just before people really understood what was possible with IP, I think. You could make a subversive movie about Josie and the Pussycats, and this is exactly how you would do it.
I
And
mean, they like literally call out that one of the characters is only in the film because she's in the comic books. Like,
Missy Pyle, yeah.
yeah, it's like, why are you here again? And she's like, it's like breaking the fourth wall. It's doing such interesting things. And yeah, it's so cheeky and it's people just didn't seem to get it. But sorry, yeah, go on.
No, that's exactly it. Like the jokes are structured for fans of the comic to like a certain point, and then they just give up on that audience because Deborah Kaplan and Harry Elfont are the people who made Can't Hardly Wait, right? Like they
Yeah.
know that a smart teen audience will show up for
Yeah.
them. And it's really more about pandering to the adults who vaguely remember Josie and the Pussycats. Like the way that Alan Cummings' dialogue is all music references from the 70s. Like he's targeting boomers in in his jokes. And Tara Reid is there to somehow channel the spirit of Melody, who never existed on the page other than as a dumb bunny joke, and
Yeah.
give her a soul because she
Yeah.
likes animals and also is
She's like the North Star of the like morality in it too.
yeah, impeccable comic timing
Yeah.
and also like yeah, integrity. Like this is a story ultimately about being Josie and the Pussycats without giving up your integrity. And having just gone over the first season of We Are Lady Parts, the Nina
Yeah.
Mansour series, which is absolutely brilliant.
Incredible show.
Season
Yeah.
2 comes out this week in Canada. I haven't gotten to it yet, but that was the thing I thought about the most was Josie and the Pussycats and the fluidity of its wit and how it does all the things you think you want this movie to do, but it does it from a place of intelligence and competence. Like their musicianship is important. It actually matters that
The
they play their
songs,
instruments. Oh, the
the songs are
songs.
incredible. Three Small Words has been one of my favorite songs for decades.
It's my karaoke go-to. And finally, people are understanding where it comes from.
I literally know it like every single word. It's ridiculous. Like when it comes on, people are like, "What is the matter with you?" But
Pretend to Be Nice is the best Fountains of Wayne song that Fountains of Wayne never performed.
it's the music was incredible. Like it's very aesthetically cohesive. It's very strong. It's like the visual jokes are amazing too. The fisheye lens, the like leaning into the aesthetic of that era in music was done in such a smart way. And like truly, like this film came out before Zoolander. Yeah.
April 11th, 2001, and Zoolander was one of the first post 9/11 releases for Paramount at the end of September.
Yeah. So like how Zoolander was received as like, oh my God, it's this brilliant comedy, like that they're the same film. Like, do you know what I mean? Like they are the same film. There's like similar montages, there's a similar structure, there's like, a similar sort of evil corporation mystery at play. Like there's similar commentaries on capitalism and branding and the way that branding was like integrated into both films. Like they're very similar films, and again, because I think we think of female coming of age as this like frivolous, silly thing. Just everyone was like, "Oh, it's dumb. It's a dumb film, Josie and the Pussycats." And then Zoolander was lauded as this like, it's still like a major like tentpole sort of like comedy movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think they're the same movie. And I just wish that Josie had been seen by more people. Yeah. I don't know what kind of like release it had. I don't know how long it was in theaters or how many people saw it, but it was like anything in that era. It's like if it was for young women, it was
discarded.
Yeah, totally. And they're like equally smart comedy films.
Oh, I would argue that this is way, way smarter. Zoolander it's fine. It's a one joke movie, and the rivalry between the two leads is just there to let Ben Stiller and Owen Wilson have charisma fights, which is fun. It's not an unpleasant movie. It's very enjoyable. But this is the one that, it's exactly what you just said at the very beginning. Josie and the Pussycats is the movie that when you talk about it to people who've seen it, they get excited. Like for 20 odd years now, people's faces light up when I talk about it.
And when someone hasn't seen it and then they watch it, I think they like also are sort of like, wait, when was this made? Like they don't buy that it was made back when it was. And like every time I watch it, I notice like a new fun little like joke or dig or, layer that I haven't noticed before. But even just like the line that Alan Cummings says to the like the goth girl in the record store, and he's like, smells like Teen Spirit, like into the walkie to be like, that's the code for like, there's some subversive teen that they have to deal with, and they like throw her into the van. Like, I had just never caught that line before. And yeah, it's just, and I mean, it, I, I know we only have 45 minutes, but I could talk about it forever. I
That's
could
the
go
joy
anywhere.
of this show. Yeah. So, well, let's talk about it from the beginning then. Did you see it at the time? Did you actually see it theatrically?
Yes, I saw it theatrically, and then I mean, wait, what year did you say it came out? 2001.
2001.
Yeah, so I was like truly like, I was 14, I guess. Yeah, 15 maybe. And I then, me and my best friend Melissa, this was like obviously before you could watch things online, and me and my best friend Melissa, her family had like a summer, like a cabin in BC, like in Gibson's, and our two families would go there every summer, and we would always be able to like rent like one or two movies for the whole like 2 weeks that we were there. And I think that summer we watched that movie probably 40 times. Like, we just could not get enough of it. And also there was like nothing else to do out there, and we were like desperately bored teenage girls, like probably trying to find, boys to smoke weed with at a skate park or something. But we were just like addicted to that film, and we watched it like every night in our sleeping bags. And so that was sort of my first introduction to it. And then I didn't watch it for quite a while, and then found it again sorry, in my like early 20s probably, and then like rewatched it in university with friends, and like you would find those people that also had loved it. And yeah, anyway, so yes, it kept me going during a summer vacation where we were bored as shit in the middle of nowhere in Canada.
It must have been incredible to see it as a teenager. I was into my 30s when I saw it, and still just like it hit me as something that felt like it was clandestine, right? Like I saw it at the Canada Square in the middle of a Friday, because either there was no press screening or I couldn't make the press screening. I can't remember, because there would always be. This is in the olden days when there would be two things on a given night, so you could only catch one. I saw the first show, like the 1:30 or the 2 o'clock, whatever it was. Walked in on my own, and me and 7 other people, and laughed my head off and just felt like I was in on something that shouldn't exist. It
felt like a wink. Yeah. Like, and as a teenage girl, very different. I'm sure you being a full grown adult man, but it felt like it felt like someone was going, we know you're smart, and we're speaking to you being like a smart young woman. Like it did feel like, you're right. Like that was like snuck in some way. But it felt nice to be spoken to like that. And it felt like, what it actually felt like? I was already a fan of like the Christopher Guest films at that time. And it does feel like one of those films. Like even especially with like Parker Posey and Eugene being in it, like there's so much crossover. And I remember being like, ooh, it's like one of those films, but for us. And that was like a really exciting thing. So yeah.
Yeah, it's so smart about how it does what it does as well. It just plunges us right in. It gives us du jour, which is still something I say reflexively whenever I'm stymied by something. Du jour means this, du jour means that.
It's du jour means family. But it also is like, it's quite crass, it's like their song is Backdoor Lover, and like it's like, it's not shying away, and like the Tara Reid sign of like honk if you love pussy. It's like, it was also like quite bold, especially for that time, but it also like wasn't gross. Like it wasn't Adam, whoever, like fucking the pie in American Pie, like there was still a layer of, it just felt like more sophisticated than that, which I appreciated.
Yeah, like it demands media literacy on so many levels, not just in the reading of the jokes, but in the understanding of the product placements and the sense that, we're already soaking in the world that this is parodying.
But it was like they were so ahead of it. Like it felt like ridiculous at the time to be like, yeah, right, subliminal messaging, yeah, right, like, yeah, right, brands can really speak to us in that insidious of a way, or as if they can be that sort of like influential or powerful. And it's like, well, yeah, of course they can. And like social media now, it's like ads know me better than my family. Like my targeted ads, I'm like, yeah, I want that exactly. Like, how did you know, Instagram, you know? And it is like, it is happening now. It's like, it was like predictive, you know? And but yeah, even just when you watch it back, like the windshield of Alan Cummings like SUV is like a Ray-Ban branded windshield, and like just everything, you know? It's so funny. It's heaven to like get to, I mean, the production design is incredible, and the costume design, which we also spoke about, but it all just like holds hands really nicely in that film.
Yeah, it is this incredibly confident construction. That's exactly what it is. As you say, it's this line I always fall back on that Edgar Wright said: directing is like teaching your cast and crew, everybody has to hold the rope at a certain tension so you don't lose the tug of war. And
well, because it's every department is going to be losing or winning a battle at a different time, but it's like, what's the most sort of fair way that those wins and losses can be distributed. But yeah, this just feels like a lot of things from that time look like shit. Like when you watch them back, you're like, this has no style, or why was it edited like that? Like I find like the editing pace from things of that era to be really weird to go back and watch now. But like, everything felt very balanced, still does in the film. So kudos to everyone involved.
It moves like a shot. It tells its story expertly. The third act stuff is all smart. Like it never sells out its characters, which of course it couldn't. They wouldn't do that. But I mean, I had Chandler Levac on in the very first year of this podcast, way back when, and she picked Can't Hardly Wait. And so we got to talk about Kaplan and Elfont and the absolute respect they have for not just the audience, but for their characters. Like even designing Seth Green's character in that film as a complete asshole, but letting everybody know it and making him confront it. Like the whole point of his character is so he can have that scene with Lauren Ambrose where they're locked together with each other and themselves. And every other teen movie made around that time would have one line of dialogue followed by, I think I learned something, right? Like there's just no time spent on the actual texture of being a teenager and figuring out who you are in real time. And then to hear that they were making the Josie movie, which I think I found out a week before the film came out, was, I want to see that. Like that sounds interesting. Yeah. And they delivered. They absolutely delivered. The songs that they assembled, I mean, the soundtrack I was delighted to find out it eventually went gold.
Did it?
Yeah. People actually do treasure the soundtrack, and now it's been released on vinyl.
Songs. Yeah, the best songs of all time.
It's a murderer's row of talent that they got. And that's the thing that I haven't heard them speak about, which I'd love to know how the songwriters responded. Because like Adam Schlesinger, who, again, Fountains of Wayne, my other favorite band, and his death in 2020 is a hole in the world for all the music we could have had. But his idea of bubblegum pop is like adorably perfect. It's exact, but it's also true to the characters, which is the thing that surprises me. If you told me that Pretend to Be Nice was a standalone song, a pop song, absolutely makes sense. But where it comes in the movie is essential.
That montage is heaven when they're climbing the charts. Like that still looks great. Like that stylistically, aesthetically, like holds up. I mean, and also truly one of the best shots in any film, hands down. I will probably be chasing it to do something similar my whole life in a comedy. But like when he is driving and he's like, where the fuck am I going to find a band in the middle of this like godforsaken town? And it's like, when it's cold and lonely. And they just like walk across and he throws the CD out of the CD case and they're like perfectly framed and the sign goes and the steam goes from the sewer grate and the slow-mo and their hair and her little weird flippy bob Rachel Lee Cook's like blows back. that is one of my favorite shots in truly any movie. And yeah, just yeah, I think about it all the time.
Oh no, it's great. And it's so slow that it tells you what's happening, which is the best bit. Like it's
Yeah.
not a surprise to anyone in the theater by the time it actually happens. You're just waiting to see what the next element is. And
Yeah.
that's what they do. They invite you into the process of the joke that they're telling and the story that's working.
Yeah, they're
So
like,
smart.
watch this other layer that we can somehow get in here. It's even like Parker Posey's braces, or yeah, like we all want this layer of this character together. And like in another film, it might be too much or silly, but yeah, my goodness. Or is it? It's braces? No, it's like a
It's a
flipper,
retainer.
like a retainer. Yeah,
Yeah.
retainer, not braces.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's just, yeah, everything is like an invitation as opposed to like a barrier into the story, which is really fun. I also like, but okay, I do have one gripe with the film. Do you want to hear it?
Yeah.
Okay, so this was the era where like there were like storylines that got so close to being queer and sapphic, and I'm like, they just didn't have the bravery to have one of them be a lesbian, but like one of them definitely was. And like I think if the film was made now, they would be. Or like Rosario Dawson and Rachel Lee Cook, like Val and Josie would like hook up or be together. But it's like it is a love story, and just in that era, like there were so many love stories between like young women, and then they just like were never actually like made queer, because it was like, well, we can't do that, like that will lose people, but it's like, I don't know, it's one of those films where I'm like, none of them is gay. And I just feel like I was, especially in that time, like looking so hard for that representation and that visibility in films. And this one, I'm like, well, this would have been like a great one. Josie's like tinkering under the hood of a truck. Like she was a bit gay presenting, and it's like, but they just didn't have the balls to do it. So anyway.
Hey, it's Norm interrupting my own show to bring you up to speed on Shiny Things, my newsletter about physical media, culture, and the odd streaming project. Last week I wrote about the new releases of Kung Fu Panda 4 and Bob Marley, One Love, as well as new editions of Peeping Tom from Criterion and American Sniper from Warner. Sign up for a 14-day free trial at shiny-things.ghost.io or find a link at the Simcast Blue Sky account. You like reading about movies? I like writing about them. Come check it out. I wonder if that was an Archie thing, like an Archie Comics thing at the time where they were really squeaky clean. I think it took them until like 10 years ago to introduce a gay character on Archie. In the comics,
Yeah.
I mean.
And now on Riverdale, it's like
everybody's poly.
Blowing everything, and poly, and everyone is, doing, I don't know, ketamine, but.
Well, that's the CW corrupting them.
That's true. Yeah. That nasty CW.
I mean, you've got Alan Cumming, but even his character is ostensibly straight.
Yeah, but he's like that. He's like the queer coded villain.
Sure. Absolutely.
That whole trope. It's like, he's always sort of been that. And it's like, it's villains got to be queer in a certain era of cinema, but they didn't get to be like protagonists,
Yeah.
But another thing, like, I think also I might be like obviously projecting a queer lens onto movies of that time. But I think too of like a film like Foxfire. Did you ever see that? It's like Angelina Jolie, and like I in my head like made up that like the two, like it is a love story. It's like the lead like falls for the like grifter like Angelina Jolie character who like blows through town, and they like fall for each other for sure. It's like very intimate. But in my mind, I was like, when I went back to watch it, I was like, oh, they like get together. And then when you rewatch it, it's like they don't even kiss, I think, in the film. They just like look at each other like really close.
Yeah.
It's like nothing like actually took that step at that time, Even stuff that was like like technically a gay story, like didn't even really like look around that corner. But yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. No, that was
That
still,
Foxfire diversion. Maybe next time we talk, we'll talk about Foxfire. And
there's a
that's a
lot to
great
talk
thing
about.
too.
Yeah. Yeah, there's absolutely a lot to talk about in there. I think what you're saying though is absolutely valid. The 90s were a time where, and it even speaks in a weird way to your comment earlier about visual style in comedies. Like it was the Kevin Smith era, right? Like Chasing Amy was as queer as you were allowed to get, and that was messy and white coded, straight coded, everything. Like it was a good effort for 1997, and that's the best
Yeah.
they got.
Good job, boys. A for effort. Yeah. I know it's really crazy when you talk to young queer people now about like we had to make Josie and the Pussycats gay in our heads. Like we had
Mm.
to make these films for us in our heads. Or survive off of like, yeah, like one long lingering glance. Like when I talk to even people who are like 5, 6 years younger than me, I'm like, I was in high school. There had been no Glee. There had been no like nothing. Like we didn't have any queer female characters on
Oh yeah, yeah.
screen. And yeah, so and now it's everywhere, which is amazing. But it's hard when you describe to people like really truly like you didn't get to watch women be in relationships with each other in film or TV before a certain year, and it really fucks with your head.
Yeah, it is impossible. You're right. It's impossible to explain it to anybody who
Hmm.
wasn't there for it. And like, I remember there was an episode of Law and Order where they wrote off a DA, an assistant DA, and she says at the very end of the episode, "Is this because I'm gay?" And somebody says no, and it's like there's been absolutely no indication of anyone's sexuality. It was just,
Yeah.
which I guess is the way you could handle it if you were writing for network television in that time. Like that's how you make it okay with yourself that this is your level of representation, or
Yeah.
a pride flag in the background of somebody's shot. That was as far as you would be allowed to get structurally, because
Hmm.
I guess this is the other thing too. Streaming and I mean YouTube, it all made it possible for more representation to explode
Hmm.
uncontrolled, right? When it was just the 4 or 5 networks, there was no way to get anything around that wasn't sanctioned for 50 million people at a time.
Yeah, there was nothing. Well, no one wanted to like be the first to take that leap, and then someone finally did, and then they were like, oh, we can make a lot of money actually off of this.
That's the thing I've never understood. The money is always the reason anyone does anything in Hollywood,
Right.
and there is so much to be made by just broadening your audience.
By
But I
selling
suppose,
people's identities back to them.
yeah. And then you get
which
to,
is which is talk about late stage capitalism, talk about evil corporations. Yeah,
yeah,
all
brings
very
us all
full
back
circle.
around. Exactly. And they want, like, I still don't walk past the McDonald's down the street without thinking, I want a Big Mac. Her delivery on that is so
Yeah,
good.
I want a Big Mac. No, it's heaven. She's so funny, and she also like. But again, like young women, young stars in that era, they got fucking put through the ringer in pop culture. Like we destroyed so many young actresses'
Oh, yeah.
brains.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
it was such a hyper specifically misogynistic time, the 90s and early 2000s, because like before the 90s there was still like this thing of like you like TV had to be classy, like pop culture, tabloids, like there were certain things that just like you couldn't like talk about in pop culture. And then in the 90s it was like, oh, we can be lewd, we can talk about sex, we can talk about things, but then it was all through this like hyper toxic masculine lens, and like the shock jock era of like, well, now we can say whatever we want in pop culture. and and then of course beyond the 2000s, like after the 2010s, we started to have more standards of like, well, you can't talk about women like that and you can't talk about gay people like that, and like feminism became like not like a dirty word finally. And but the 90s and 2000s, like the young women that were famous in that time specifically, I think got so screwed over. Like Lindsay Lohan being on Larry King, and like old men talking about her tits as a 16-year-old, and like, you know, Diane Sawyer like bullying Britney Spears about being a virgin. It's like these girls were like babies, and we just held them to these impossible standards. But when people, and like Paris Hilton, like her sex tape was like not consensual, and it was just like revenge porn that was put, like
Mm-hmm.
it's really crazy what we allowed pop culture to do to these young women. And I feel like Tara Reid kind of got like became a victim of that as well. And it's like it's just such a shame the young women that got lost to that era of really being in a pressure cooker of a really strange time.
I think it was the backlash of Reagan morality giving way to Clinton stuff in the States and the rise of Fox News, right? Like in the
well, because like in the 70s, you wouldn't have been able to talk about a famous actress's tits on TV. Like, do you know what I mean? Like that just wasn't the color of the time. And then in the 90s, it became, oh, we are going to talk about sex. We are going to talk about things that like weren't previously traditionally allowed.
Right. Yeah, but Jerry Springer is going to be the one who talks about it.
Yeah, and like, or just like it was just really, really. When you look back at it, it was so exaggeratedly gross. Or like Perez Hilton coming around in that time, like he literally is at fault for like probably the deaths of some of these young stars. I think he has like some blood on his hands. Like it was really the way we talked about their bodies, and yeah, no wonder they were all looking that good in their low-rise pants. They were under such insane pressure at the time to like, you know, not be real women, but you know,
giving themselves eating disorders and and worse.
And of course, all these things still exist, but I feel like there is now an accountability of like you can't talk about a 16-year-old's tits or the like on a major primetime like late night comedy show. Like now it's like Jay Leno wouldn't be able to be making the jokes that he made about teenage Britney Spears or teenage Rachel Lee Cook, you know, like it just wouldn't happen like that now. But that no one was like protecting that demographic of young women at that time. So I think also like why the movie felt sort of special, because it was like, no, like these are comedy stars and they were like presented as such. But then I don't know what happened to Tara Reid. But I think it's a shame because I think she was always so funny. You're right. Her timing was impeccable. Yeah.
Yeah. And Rosario Dawson's great and Rachel Lee Cook is great, and they're actually playing their instruments, even though they're not necessarily. I mean, I do, just to snap it back to the soundtrack for one last time, because I love it so much.
I'll talk about it forever.
I love the fact that like, not only is Kay Hanley from Letters to Cleo providing Josie's vocals, but Rachel Lee Cook is on backing vocals. She is still singing on those songs. And the Biff Naked is in there, which I didn't even know until a couple of weeks ago.
I didn't know that. What a fun Canadian tie-in.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. I love that. I loved Biff Naked songs. Well, also the other syncs, like the other needle drops, like the one we mentioned when he's like, he finds them in the CD case in the road, and like, but there's like such incredible syncs like throughout the soundtrack as well, not just the Josie songs, you know. But oh man, it's like it just felt like there was like a lot of care put into every detail, like we were mentioning, you know, even the like Target plane and the like, I don't know. Or every time you see the hordes of teenagers, like they're in the color that has been deemed the new pink. Like it's just the way that they did that was just so well done, I thought. And it wasn't like hit over the head. It was just like you'd see them shopping, and then now they were in orange, and then they were in blue, and like I just loved it. I loved the visuals.
Yeah, it's a graceful comedy, which again there weren't a lot of at the time. And you know, you're 4 years away from the Judd Apatow wave really coming in. This is the era of Road Trip and Euro Trip, and movies that look like television, really. Like just as much as HBO was eating everybody else's lunch with style and 16:9 TV, the movies were starting to look less so.
Yeah, it was like the great shift of cinema and TV sort of switching places. But I think like a lot of comedy that was being fed to young people at that time. I've talked about this before, but like the things that were for anyone other than like young white heterosexual male were given like much higher ratings. Like I've spoken about this in interviews before, but in the same day that American Pie came out, But I'm a Cheerleader came out too. And there's a really great doc called This Film Is Not Yet Rated that talks about sort of the shadowy figures that were the like review board that gave movies their ratings at that time. I don't know what the process is now, but they just like, they were all very sort of like Christian, like family values leaning, like conservative, the people on this board. And they gave American Pie, where like quite literally someone is fucking a pie and like women are getting like assaulted and spied on while they're changing and like, you know, like really terrible shit. Like that was given an R. So every teenager in America got to go see it. And then, But I'm a Cheerleader, which quite literally just has like one kiss between two characters. Like there's nothing overtly sexual in it. Obviously there's like satirical sexual jokes and stuff, but in terms of like actual graphic depictions of sex, like it's so mild.
There's not.
But because it was queer, it was given an NC-17 rating, and like no one really got to see that film. And that could like imagine if every teenager that had seen American Pie saw But I'm a Cheerleader instead, like that. But that happened all the time. That happened every week. It was like Boys Don't Cry got an NC-17, and the reason why was because like Chloe Sevigny, like someone wiped, like when Hilary Swank is like going down on Chloe Sevigny, like Hilary Swank's character like wipes his mouth, and that's the reason why it was given an NC-17. It's like female pleasure, queer pleasure is like was deemed so dangerous at the time. And yeah, so I like, it's so interesting that things that were through like a male gaze were allowed to be so gross and so crass. And then I don't know, we had to fight for like every single ounce of something being like sexual or edgy as like when it was for young women, especially at that time, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've just been following because it's Pride Month. People are rediscovering, because this happens every year, I guess, Brokeback Mountain, and complaining that it isn't explicit enough, that they wanted more from it, and realizing that that's not even 20 years old. That was the, you know, the more, and no, you know, I don't mean any disrespect. It's the movie that they made because that was the movie they could make. But to see this supposedly groundbreaking queer narrative come out and basically just be all implication in terms
like
of
alluded to.
In terms of the sex act.
I will say, as queer people, we do also love things just being sort of alluded to. And
I mean, I'm sure you're used to it by now.
Very sexy. Yeah, exactly. That's what we've been conditioned to watch and like. But no, I totally. When you go back and look at the history, the body of work that we have as queer people and how we've been represented, it's very few and far between. It's also, like you're saying, either very safe and like barely there, or like villainized. So
yeah, it's always coding.
And also because it's like in Josie too, it's like the Alex, like the manager, like he's queer coded too. Like that man is not gay, you know, but it's like he's also this like sort of like foil to them, like this greedy capitalist. So that's interesting too. He was definitely queer.
There's got to be. We need to figure out how to make this thing into an event, a reunion of some sort to really talk it through. Because I would love to know literally everything about this production. It is such a tiny weird miracle. I think there's a commentary track on it. Yeah, there is. There's a commentary track on the Blu-ray. But
okay, well, when I see you in Toronto next, I'm going to borrow that Blu-ray. Or I'll go buy it for $6.
Yeah, people will have it in LA. But yeah, you're always welcome to borrow it. And before I lose you, because I can see the time is running out, the way the podcast usually ends is by me asking you if there's anything from the movie you chose that made it into your work. And Feel Good feels more like a Josie and the Pussycats project than I Used to Be Funny. But if there's anything in there, I'd be really curious.
I don't think like anything explicit, but I think just like letting women be really funny in their own specific way. Like I think anything that I've loved and latched onto as like an audience member that's made its way into my filmmaking is like letting someone's specific comedic voice shine through. So like in this film, like whether it's Parker Posey, like she's just such a specific comedic voice, but then like they really did embrace like how Rosario Dawson sort of has a totally different style and like way of being funny, and like they let all of those things exist together. And so I think like holding that specificity for everyone equally and allowing their voices to shine through while still keeping things cohesive, like I hope that's something that I have done in my work, and Feel Good maybe specifically, but that's something that I've always been drawn to. And when I think about maybe what I took away from Josie, it would be that.
Yeah. And I also wanted to ask about the casting choices in I Used to Be Funny, because it hit me after a while that you've cast comedians in fairly serious parts, and that's like clearly deliberate, but I'm curious how you hit on that.
It's just, I think they're better. I think it's harder to be a good comedic actor than it is to be a good dramatic actor. And I think if you can do that, you already just have so much vulnerability in you if you're comedic, that doesn't feel acted when you're being dramatic, maybe. It just feels like the vulnerability that I think a lot of funny people have simmering right under the surface, and just like the pathos in comedians, and, Tears of a Clown type stuff.
Yeah, I remember Soderbergh saying it about The Informant, where he just wanted a different energy in every scene. But it's a great call. Like, it's a really interesting thing that immediately makes me look more closely at what's going on in every given scene. And Rachel Sennett, who is a dramatic actor as well as a comic, that's fantastic.
She's incredible. Like, I think the great trick of Rachel Sennett is like, because she's so funny in her own life, and her characters that she's been known for predominantly have been obviously very funny. Like, people must go, oh, that's just who she is, and so it's effortless, it's easy what she does. It's like, no, it's so hard what she does, and she makes it look effortless, and that's why she's so good. And I think in this, it's clear in everything that she does. I think if you're paying attention, that she's a very skilled, like a technical actress, but she's a very, very skilled technical dramatic actress as well. So I'm excited for people to see a bit of a darker turn. But she also is so funny just in everything. She's heartbreaking, and she just like walks that high wire very, very well. So I'm excited for people to see her in I Used to Be Funny. And I would also love to see her in a Josie and the Pussycats remake, and I would be the first in line to direct that. So.
Oh my God, she'd be great. I can't believe it never even occurred to me.
I am truly like, it's my dream to do a remake of it. I don't really like remakes, but this would be one where I'd be like, I will work my whole life to not butcher a remake of Josie and the Pussycats, to pay homage to it properly. So
this is the era of IP. There must be someone to pitch. Pitch Netflix.
There's gotta be a way. All right. I'll do it. We'll do it when we get off the call. Cool.
My thanks to Ally Pankiw, whose first feature, I Used to Be Funny, arrives in theaters across North America this Friday, June 7th. Thanks also to Angie Power. She knows what she did. You can find Ally on Instagram at Ally Pankiw, all one word, and you can find Josie and the Pussycats on Blu-ray in that 20th anniversary special edition I mentioned from Mill Creek Entertainment. It's also on DVD from Universal Studios Home Entertainment and available to rent or buy on various VOD services across North America. You can find me on Blue Sky at Norm Wilner, and you can find this podcast there at Semcast, SEMcast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. The first year of the show is still available for just $20 at payhip.com/Semcast. That's the first 52 episodes of Someone Else's Movie, 44 of which aren't currently available anywhere else. And check out my newsletter, Shiny Things, at shiny-things.ghost.io. I think you'll enjoy it. Our theme song's by The Last Year. If you like it or the show in general, please say so. Leave a review wherever you've been listening. Every little bit helps, it truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network while you're doing that. Stay safe, watch movies, wear a mask if you go out, get the new booster when you can. I'll see you next week.